We're here at E3 2016. I'm Justin and this is Peter. And we just got done playing some Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the completely different take on the Zelda franchise. Peter, what were your immediate impressions of this?
I mean, I was immediately under the impression that I was playing a modern sort of reimagining of the original Legend of Zelda, right? That game opened up, there was some like text kind of telling you what your goal was, what was happening in the world, but really you were left on your own to sort of start your adventure and figure out where you're going to go and what you're going to do. That persists in this game, and I really appreciated that, but there's so much to do in the world that doesn't really compare to any other Zelda game.
Going through the demo, it really opened up how freeing that is, that you can kind of go on a path, and I was doing the demo, and my guy, the person who was leading me, was like, if you go along this way, you know, you'll be able to go to a dungeon and get a feel for what's going on, and I just kind of went off into the woods and started chopping down a tree and like trying to get some fruit. It's like, you can just do so many weird little things.
Yeah, you can chop down trees, you can gather wood, you can build fires, you can collect ingredients, you can combine those ingredients and cook to make health items or elixirs that give you like greater speed or stronger, you know, attacks or better defense, or even able to sneak, you know, with more efficiency at night. It's just super impressive. Either way, you can fight an enemy and they can drop their weapon mid-fight, and that just becomes your weapon if you want it. You can use it in that fight, you can store it for later, and it's just amazing like how resourceful you can be in this world, and it feels like a much more organic experience on so many levels compared to, you know, some of the more popular Zelda games of the past few years.
It's taking the Zelda franchise in a completely new direction, and they're adding things that you definitely don't associate with the Zelda franchise. Right. Of course, there's the Master Sword and there's Link, and the color palette all evokes that nostalgic feeling. But when you're fighting an enemy and your weapon can break, like that's never been in a Zelda game. You have to pick up weapons from enemies. You don't feel as attached to, I have this one thing and I'm going to keep using it. You want to be more experimental with how you approach things.
Totally. And one thing I really love, this little change, is the way that they handle bombs now. In the past, bombs would be items that you would have to collect and you could run out of them, right? So now it is more of sort of a magical ability that Link has, and bombs work on a cooldown timer. So after you throw one, you have to wait. But more than that, you can throw a bomb and remote detonate it. Like, that's how it works. So you throw a bomb and then you just push your hand out and it explodes in this huge orb. It's a Link that we've never seen before with these kind of abilities.
The biggest ability, I think the thing that you can't not mention when you see this game, is that Link can finally jump.
He can jump and he can climb too.
Like, he can climb anything. Like, I know that, like, it seems so silly when you think about like all sorts of games let you run and jump and do all these things, but Zelda has kind of built itself on outside of the, I think, Link's Awakening, where you had a feather. Of course, you're able to jump there, but the 3D games have always been about building puzzles and building a world where that happens automatically, and giving you that freedom opens up whole new venues to explore. And the levels, the world that we were playing around in had so much verticality and so much to explore.
It did, yeah, and one of the important things about that is verticality is meant to sort of give you a means to get from point A to point B, and to spot things in the environment that you wouldn't see from the ground level. A lot of these dungeons are sort of held in these towers, and from the top of the tower, which also acts as sort of like a checkpoint, like where you can go back after you die, you can spot things in the environment and then use a sort of a hang glider to get there, but you wouldn't see it if you were down below. And that opens up a lot of interesting possibilities, but even dying itself sounds like part of the fun. Like, you're meant to experiment, you're meant to go out of your way to see what you're capable of, to take the risk to try to like get some reward out of it, be it the experience or like a new weapon or anything. But when you die, you just go back to, you know, pretty much the closest area that you were, and it doesn't take that long, it seems, to sort of get back to the last place that you were, you know, experimenting. But the map that we played on, didn't they say it was only 1% of the game?
1% of the game. The game is about 12 times the size of Twilight Princess, which is already a huge game, one of the biggest Zelda games up to that point.
Yeah, like they showed us the map that we were playing on. It had Hyrule Castle, it had
the Temple of Time,
Hyrule River, like, was the Death Mountain on there?
Death Mountain, you could see Death Mountain in the distance, all these recognizable features.
And then they pulled the map back, and it's like, wait, that is like this much of a map this big. I have no idea what to expect from the rest of that world. And they did say that the stuff that we were playing, the opportunities around you were perhaps more dense than they will be in the rest of the map. And that was because that's the game introducing you to these possibilities. But likewise, we didn't really have a horse, right? And having a horse is one of the important things in this game. So down the road, even if things are more spread out, it sounds like you'll be able to get from point A to point B in effectively just the same amount of time to experience all of that stuff.
Yeah, it gives us Zelda in a way that I've never played it before, and it's not what I was expecting, but it's still so exciting to think about those possibilities. Like, even 1 hour with the game felt like nowhere near enough, and I don't think I'm going to have enough time before the game even comes out to feel like I understand everything that you can do in this world.
There's a lot that you can do. It is really impressive. And like there's so many things in there that we've just never seen before, just to keep going back to that, because I keep remembering stuff. There's so much. Like Link has like knight armor now.
Yeah, that it's not just one suit. You get like the red armor, blue armor, green armor.
Right.
You can actually get different clothes. You get a whole suit of armor. That's amazing. Like, and it's so different for Zelda. It's like so taking things in a new, fun, exciting direction.
Yeah, and there's even like a whole temperature system now, right? So if Link is getting cold or he's too hot, he can actually change his clothing to counteract that, which is pretty interesting.
And a stealth mechanic. Stealth has always had like a little bit of a part of Zelda, but that's actually something that you do in this game. You can crawl around in the grass, you can see how much noise you're making, and that plays into how you can approach battles and how you're going to fight the guys you're going up against.
Yeah. And Hyrule itself has been transformed quite a bit, because the story goes that Link has sort of been in hibernation for a century. Because 100 years ago, Ganon overtook Hyrule Castle. I should say he's referred to as Calamity Ganon. He doesn't really seem to be like a being as much as an entity in this game. But so now that he's on the verge of taking over all of Hyrule, you've woken up and you have to explore Hyrule in ruin. We didn't see any villages of people. We saw buildings that had overgrowth all over them. Things looked like they hadn't been touched by humans in a century.
In this very familiar setting. Like, I'm sure that because that was just 1% of the map, there are going to be villages and people.
I expect that might happen.
Dungeons and bosses and like all these things that we don't even know what those are like yet. Like, that's so exciting that we're still get to experience it.
Well, and recently, Link has always been introduced as sort of a member of a village, right? He plays some sort of role in that and is like graduating from something like in Skyward Sword, or he's just sort of setting out on an adventure from his hometown. And here, we're introduced to him. He's waking up in a cave. He walks outside. There's very little direction. There's a young female voice. You could safely assume it's Princess Zelda, I think, but she's kind of guiding him out of the cave. But from there on, it's really just this massive open world.
Link, you are the light, our light, that must shine upon Hyrule once again. Now go.
You do meet an old man, sort of strange old man in the mountain, who provides you some information about his past, but not very much. But he wants to ask you about who you are, and when you start on your journey, you sort of encounter an opportunity to interact with another character, and he starts to ask you details about that, and you can choose whether or not to tell him, which in a sense is whether or not to trust him. And I have a hunch that he's going to play a pivotal role as a bad guy, maybe. I mean, it stokes that it's sort of interesting.
And another thing really interesting that this Zelda game does is it gives you different paths, kind of related to what you said at the beginning, that you don't have to go on a set path for as far as dungeons. Right. If you want to go and get one ability first or go get bombs first, you're not tethered to approaching things always in the same path. It's not a very linear level 1, level 2, level 3. It's a world to explore.
Yeah, and when I asked him as well, like, okay, people play Zelda games, they can collect every item usually, within a reasonable amount of time and feel like they've beaten the game, but this world is so big compared to other Zelda games. How long will it take people to collect all these items? Could they play for 100 hours? He didn't say yes or no to 100 hours, but he said no one in the office has found every item. So I have no idea who's going to be able to do it.
We're going to have a lot of gameplay up on the site for people to watch. There's a whole stream here at E3, and we're going to be having as many editors as we can get hands-on with this and try it out and see what else they can discern from this demo. But if you want to read more and see more of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, well, you can find that right here on GameSpot.com.